Welcome to Mind Blueprint, and thank you so much for taking the time to watch our videos. We created this space to help you decode the silent architecture of your beautiful, complicated brain. And having you here as part of our community means the world to us. If our deep dives into human behavior help you understand your patterns and feel deeply seen, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps our channel grow so we can keep bringing you accessible psychology and neuroscience. We hope you enjoy the video.
Today, we're popping the hood on the MAGA movement. Now, we're not here to argue daily politics, no way. Instead, we're going to dive into the actual peer-reviewed research, ethnographic studies, and hard social media data to decode the psychology, the digital strategies, and the global influences driving one of the most powerful political forces of our time. To really wrap our heads around this, we're taking a micro to macro approach. We're going to hit the roots of political loyalty, the power of parasocial bonds, weaponizing the dark MAGA aesthetic, the politics of social status, and finally, foreign influence on U.S. discourse. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the roots of political loyalty and psychological predispositions. So, when we look at this intense, almost absolute political devotion, a big question always pops up, right? Is this just unyielding loyalty, or is it straight-up delusion? Critics are always quick to write devoted followers off as totally irrational. But you know what? Social psychology tells us a totally different story. The cognitive machinery running behind the scenes here is actually highly structured. The real answer lies in this fascinating psychological concept called identity fusion. Imagine the boundary between your own personal self and a political leader completely dissolving, getting totally porous. For someone in this state, hearing negative information about their leader, it doesn't register as a simple policy debate. Nope. Their brain processes it as a literal direct attack on their own identity. That is exactly why throwing hard facts at people almost never changes their minds. And this kind of loyalty is really driven by two distinct psychological engines: right-wing authoritarianism, or RWA, and social dominance orientation, SDL. Now, they might sound kind of similar, but they operate completely differently. RWA is all about fear. It's a deep fear of threats to the established social order. SDO, on the other hand, is driven by a desire to preserve power hierarchies. So if a political figure promises to maintain order and protect those power dynamics, well, they've just perfectly tapped into a massive psychological goldmine. Moving on to Section 2, the power of parasocial bonds and the media connection. This brings us to a super fascinating study out of the University at Buffalo. Researchers looked at Donald Trump's time on The Apprentice. Think about it. Years of watching him on TV basically forged these intense, one-sided parasocial bonds between the reality host and the viewers. Since he was hanging out in living rooms way before he was ever on a ballot, these bonds formed across the entire political spectrum. People literally felt like they knew his decisive personality, all thanks to a carefully edited reality TV narrative. And here is why that's an absolute game changer. These deep parasocial relationships essentially act like an intense psychological filter. The data actually shows that because of these bonds, individuals were predisposed to just believe his promises and completely brush off controversial statements. The connection was so incredibly strong that it actually predicted real-world voting behavior, even for voters who normally wouldn't touch a Republican ticket. It's wild. It just proves how deeply our media diets can completely rewire our political actions. Okay, let's see how this scales up. Section 3. Weaponizing the dark MAGA aesthetic and digital subcultures. So let's look at how all this individual psychology scales up online into something called dark MAGA. This really blew up in 2022. It's this post-alt-right aesthetic that's been dominating platforms like X, Telegram, and Reddit. The vibe? It depicts this unhinged, punished version of Trump who has just totally ditched all traditional political optics. We're talking heavily saturated red and black filters, those Terminator-style laser eyes, and a full-on embrace of a ruthless villain persona. It essentially takes internet trolling and anime culture and mashes them up into a highly stylized, very addictive visual language. The whole ethos here is perfectly captured by the users themselves, who actually claim, and I quote, "There is no political solution beyond vengeance." By using this extreme doom and gloom apocalyptic language, the movement creates an absolute us versus them reality. It binds followers together through the idea of an existential threat, completely cutting them off from outside perspectives. Because think about it, if you genuinely believe the fate of civilization is on the line, compromise is totally off the table. Extreme rhetoric just becomes the new normal.
And this isn't just random internet noise, it is highly operationalized. Far-right memes follow a very specific formula, mixing government conspiracy theories, claims of media censorship, and derogatory humor aimed at specific outgroups. This subculture essentially weaponizes trolling to hijack media attention. It creates this perfect algorithm-friendly feedback loop that constantly deepens their ideological cohesion. So make no mistake, these aren't just edgy internet jokes. We're looking at a deeply sophisticated vehicle for persuasion. Let's step away from the internet for a second. Section 4, the politics of social status, grievance, and joy. If we look at actual ethnographic field studies of MAGA activists, they point to this concept known as the symbolic politics of status. What this means is that the core conflict isn't really about material things like taxes or the economy. It's actually a battle over whose values, whose lifestyles, and whose identities deserve societal respect. The movement basically functions around a shared perception of lost honor, a feeling of being institutionally disrespected by cultural elites. But here's an absolutely crucial point. It is definitely not all about anger. The movement offers this incredibly powerful emotional framework that mixes self-righteous grievance with honestly profound collective joy. You go to these rallies and participants are finding community, pride, and a deep sense of belonging. They're actively trying to reclaim their social status by redefining what it means to be a true American. That potent cocktail, shared grievance against outsiders combined with collective joy among insiders, is exactly what makes the movement so incredibly resilient. Finally, let's zoom all the way out to the macro view. Section 5, foreign influence on U.S. discourse. Okay, this part is pretty startling. Recent data pulled from social media transparency tools shows that several massive influential MAGA accounts that present themselves online as deeply patriotic, grassroots Americans, are actually operated by foreign actors. We are talking about accounts with hundreds of thousands, sometimes a million followers, being run from places like Nigeria, Eastern Europe, and Thailand. Seriously, let that sink in. So what's the big takeaway here? It's that the psychology and the digital infrastructure we've been talking about are extremely vulnerable. These international operators seamlessly co-opt that dark MAGA aesthetic and trigger the exact psychological vulnerabilities, like identity fusion, that we unpacked earlier. They just feed the algorithms with extreme content to deliberately fracture U.S. political discourse. They are literally monetizing the genuine, organic grievances of domestic voters to run massive, destabilizing influence campaigns. So we've traced the whole feedback loop, right? From the deep psychology of identity fusion, through the digital trenches of dark MAGA, all the way up to foreign digital manipulation. And as these digital borders continue to blur and algorithms keep rewarding extremity, it leaves us with one absolutely vital question. Who is truly controlling the narrative in our modern political landscape? Is it the voters, the politicians, or is it unseen actors brilliantly exploiting the very architecture of human psychology?
If you enjoyed this video, hit the like and subscribe button and join our community of bridge builders. Let's keep exploring the weird and wonderful ways our psychology shapes who we are today. See you in the next one.